Now that the 2025 NFL Draft has come and gone for the Washington Commanders, what other positions could they still address before the start of the 2025 season? And which players are still available on the free agency and trade markets for them to possibly pursue? Today on the Commanders Report, we'll be talking about just that, talking about some of the top targets, both in free agency and the trade market for your Washington Commanders after the NFL Draft. Before we get into all the content today and talk about all the players that the Commanders could still go add to this roster for 2025, let me know down there in the comments section and get us started. Grade Adam Peters' offseason to this point. Simply give me an A, a B, a C, a D, or an F. Let me know what you guys think so far about the Commanders offseason. And with that, let's get into it. So we'll start with the remaining holes on the Steelers roster. Edge rusher, strong safety, wide receiver, and linebacker depth. Now, I think that wide receiver and linebacker, you can take it or leave it. But you could certainly see why you could want some help at edge rusher and true box safety as an early down contributor at the strong safety position. So before we get into players and before we talk about specifics here, let's talk about what the Washington Commanders have at their disposal in terms of cap resources. They have just over $23.3 million in available cap space for the 2025 campaign, which still ranks in the top half of the league. So they still have plenty of cap space that they could use. And at this point, free agents and even a lot of the trade targets out there, the cap number that you're going to be adding to your team is not going to be all that high. So if the Commanders feel like there's players out there that can help this roster, they can absolutely make the required moves to make that happen. So first, let's start with the position that everyone wants to talk about, which is the edge rusher position for the Washington Commanders, because they didn't address it in the NFL Draft, and they haven't been able to land a star player at this position. They were in on Myles Garrett. They've been in on Trey Hendrickson. They haven't been able to make that deal happen. And right now, a lot of Commanders fans, a lot of people around the National Football League are looking at this group and saying, Dorrance Armstrong is your number one edge rusher, Dietrich Wise, Cleveland Ferrell, Jacob Martin. Like, these are your top four guys. Like, it wasn't a very good group last year, but with Dante Fowler Jr. leaving for the Dallas Cowboys, you can easily make the argument that this year's edge rusher group is worse than last year's, all right? So, I mean, let's look at some of the targets here. And the people that have asterisks next to their names are the people that are trade targets, the people that you're going to have to trade for. So Trey Hendrickson probably tops most people's list from the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll talk about him specifically here in just a second. But also there's some good free agency options out there. Von Miller, Zadarius Smith, Matthew Judon is out there. A couple other trade players that could potentially be traded. Tyree Wilson from the Raiders, Odafe Owe from the Baltimore Ravens, two guys that have been linked in trade kind of rumors lately, and then some other free agency options, Preston Smith, DeMarcus Walker, John Kaminsky, and Carl Lawson. Lawson in particular because he comes from the Dallas Cowboys. And yes, a Trey Hendrickson trade is still possible, guys, all right? Like, just because now the Cincinnati Bengals can't get a draft pick for this year doesn't necessarily mean that you can't still make a deal. And, you know, it seems like the Commanders are not willing to give up a first-round draft pick for him. And because you gave up your second-round pick in the Laramie Tunsil trade, I honestly don't know what we're looking at here in terms of the value that they can provide to the Bengals. Right now, if they're not willing to give up a first-round draft pick for Trey, you're looking at a third-round pick in 2026 and Dorrance Armstrong. If I'm the Bengals, that is not a deal that I want to take. But also, you could think about, you know, if you're the Commanders, I would be okay giving up a first-round pick for Trey Hendrickson. I would. All right, now obviously that would mean at this point that the Commanders would not have a first-round pick in either or a pick in either round 1 or in round 2 in 2026, which obviously is not ideal, but it's not like you're going to have to be using those draft picks on a quarterback, right? So if they're really trying to go all in on players that can help them win now, I could potentially see them upgrade this to a first-round pick, but it really doesn't seem like Adam Peters is willing to give up his first 2 draft selections next year in order to land Trey Hendrickson. So some of the other targets that you could look at here, Odafe Oweh, I think, would be an excellent addition to this team. If you can make the Baltimore Ravens see, okay, yeah, we'll trade him to you. He had 10 sacks last year, man. That could be your Dante Fowler Jr. right there, and I don't think it would cost that much to get an Odafe Oweh. Then you have Zadarius Smith, who was pretty productive last year, had, I believe, 9.5 sacks last year, or maybe 9 sacks with the Detroit Lions. When he got traded there last year. Von Miller is still kicking out there, had 6 sacks last year, formerly a number 1 edge rusher in this league and a bona fide superstar. Matthew Judon had a down year last year, but 2 years ago, it was not that long ago, and he was pretty darn good in that season. Then Tyree Wilson is still, the guy that got taken in the top 5 of the NFL draft. He still has that elite physical pedigree that maybe Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. feel like they can get the most out of in a trade. So keep your eye on these 5 edge rusher targets as well as Trey Hendrickson. Let me know, would you accept this trade if you are the Washington Commanders? And I think that, if you're the Commanders and the Bengals would be acceptable to this, I think that this is an absolute slam dunk home run for them. To only give up a 3rd-round pick for Trey Hendrickson, I think it would be a no-brainer. Honestly, the harder question might be, would you give up a 1st-round pick next year for him? So let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. A for accept or D for decline. This will be the pinned comment on today's show. YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds, and when that happens, take advantage of that time. But let me know if you'd pull the trigger on this Trey Hendrickson trade. So now let's talk about some potential options at strong safety for the Washington Commanders, because they did bring in Will Harris, who's kind of a versatile type of defensive back, former corner from the New Orleans Saints. But this defense, led by Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr., they like to have a true box safety, a Cam Chancellor type, a Jeremy Chin type, a bigger type of strong safety that plays in the box and is a true kind of run defender, playing close to the line of scrimmage. And they like to have a true free safety. In this defense, at least last year, that was Quan Martin. So I think that Will Harris would be an excellent fit in terms of pass-heavy downs as a split field safety type of player alongside Martin. But I don't know if you ask him to play a true box safety role on early downs that he's going to have a lot of success. So if you want to go get that type of player, there's actually quite a few strong safeties that are still available in free agency. Rayshawn Jenkins, Jordan Whitehead, Julian Blackmon, Quandre Diggs, and Von Bell. All these guys started games just last season. All right, so this is certainly something here where if the Commanders still feel like they need to get an early down player to play that strong safety role and play in the box, they can certainly go out and do that. And my preferred option here is Rayshawn Jenkins, who is 220 pounds and is an excellent athlete. Last year for the Seattle Seahawks, 53 tackles, 0 interceptions, and 0 PBUs. So obviously not a whole lot of ball production there. But at that size and with his athletic profile, he fits what the Washington Commanders want in their starting strong safety. You take a look here at his relative athletic score when he was coming out. Now, obviously, these numbers are from 2017. We're currently in the year of our Lord, 2025, so maybe these numbers aren't exactly up to date, but you get my point here, guys, where he had a 9.36 relative athletic score because he ran a 4.51 40-yard dash time at his size at 220 pounds. So he's going to be somebody that brings some athleticism and some size and can play more of that true box safety type of role on early downs for this defense if you ask him to do that. And that's exactly what I think he would be doing here in Washington. He'd be playing that early down role where you're playing him in the box and then you take him off the field on 2nd down and longs, on 3rd down and mediums, on 3rd down and longs in the 2-minute drill. And you put Will Harris out there as your other kind of deep field safety there. And I think that would be a really good setup, or at least a pretty decent setup for this team after losing Jeremy Chin in free agency this year. So coming up here, we got more post-draft targets. We still got wide receivers and off-ball linebackers to talk about here. But before we get into those, let's have a word from our sponsor here at Fanatics, where you guys can go to chatsports.com/Daniels, pick up your brand new Jaden Daniels Commanders jersey today. Let's face it, guys, Daniels is going to be here for a while. So if you want a jersey that's going to remain relevant for probably over a decade at this point, and maybe forever, depending on how many Super Bowls and MVPs Jaden Daniels wins here in Washington, you can go to chatsports.com/Daniels and make an investment in a brand new Jaden Daniels jersey today. Another added bonus is if you use our link, chatsports.com/Daniels. It's down there in the comments and description of today's show and you make a purchase, Fanatics sends us part of the proceeds here at the Commanders Report to help keep the lights on, help us pay rent, do all the different stuff that we need to do here at Chat Sports. It also helps improve our equipment and our graphics so that this can be as enjoyable of an experience for you guys as possible. So thank you guys so much for your support. And if you want that new jersey in your closet today, all you have to do is go to chatsports.com/Daniels and make a purchase. So now on to the wide receivers, because this is an interesting position group to me this year, guys, because you look at what the Commanders are dealing with right now, and you got Terry McLaurin at the 1. Then, Deebo Samuel is technically your number 2 wide receiver, but he's more of a chess piece type of guy. He's not necessarily somebody you line up at Z every single play and you say, all right, go beat your guy one-on-one and just cook him with your route running. That's not the type of player Deebo is. You're going to be moving people around there at the wide receiver position for the Washington Commanders this year. And you got Noah Brown as your number 3 receiver. And then behind him, you got guys like Luke McCaffrey, KJ Osborne, Jalen Lane, who they just drafted out of Virginia Tech. And, even though, Noah Brown showed some decent things last year in the time that he was playing for the Washington Commanders, I still think, there's some options out there that could be upgrades at this position alongside Terry McLaurin. And if they can add a legit number 2 receiver on the outside, I think that they probably should if you can get him for the right price. And, I look at 2 guys that are still available in the free agency market right now that I think could potentially help this football team out, and that's Keenan Allen and Amari Cooper. Now, Keenan Allen, a bigger wide receiver that made his living in the slot as a route-running technician for many years, I still believe that he is still more than capable of being a good receiver in this league. And obviously, he's never won a Super Bowl, and he's still available as a free agent. So if the Commanders gave him a call, I still feel like he would be very interested in playing for the Washington Commanders this year. You can line him up outside. You can line him up inside. Still a very good route runner. Still has very reliable hands. I think he'd be a really good fit to pair with both Deebo Samuel and Terry McLaurin. And then you can kind of allow the other players in your wide receiver room, guys like Luke McCaffrey, Jalen Lane, Noah Brown, really earn everything that they get in this offense, and you really allow the best players to play in this group, and you really feel like you've got a group here at the wide receiver position that is worth the talents of the guy throwing them the football in Jayden Daniels. So I love Keenan Allen. I love his drive at this point in his NFL journey. He really wants to win, and I think that he would take less money to come play for Washington if they offered him a contract. So finally here, let's talk a little bit about some off-ball linebackers, because let's face it, Bobby Wagner's not going to be here forever. And Jordan McGee, Kai Madrano, these guys are more kind of smaller interior linebackers that are probably going to be more kind of rotational guys, pass coverage type of dudes. And they're also very young. So if you want to get somebody to add to the rotation here alongside Bobby Wagner and alongside Frankie Louvu and really solidify this group, there's still some really good off-ball linebackers still available. C.J. Mosley probably wants to start, so maybe wouldn't come to Washington in a rotational role, but maybe Frankie Louvu can get his guy Shaq Thompson to come here. I think that would be an excellent third safety to add to the group. Kaiser White, kind of a blitzing linebacker type that's played for a number of teams, including the Arizona Cardinals, was a really good blitzer for them last year. Eric Kendricks is more of a pass coverage type of linebacker. He's a little bit decreased athletically at this point in his career, but he's still very instinctive. And then same thing with Quan Alexander, who's been known as a really good coverage linebacker in a rotational role his entire career. So these are some guys, if you're the Commanders and you want to upgrade that off-ball linebacker position, you can look into this offseason. So who's your guy? Let me know down there in the comment section. Which non-quarterback would you like to see the Commanders bring in this offseason? Let me know down there in the comments section. Can't be a quarterback, obviously, but the Commanders don't need to bring in a quarterback, right? You got Jayden Daniels. You've got Marcus Mariota. You don't really need another quarterback in there. So just let me know, what other player would you like the Commanders to bring in this offseason? All right, guys, make sure you get down there and let me know who made it to the end of the show, because those are the real ones, all right? The people that watch to the end of the show, those people help out the YouTube algorithm the most. So I want you guys to identify yourselves down there in the comments section so that we can give you guys some love love down there in the comments. Type those real ones in all caps to identify yourselves. I greatly appreciate all of your guys' support. And don't forget, click that subscribe button if you haven't already, because we got more offseason coverage for your Washington Commanders coming all throughout the 2025 offseason. And until next time, guys, hail to the Commanders.